I had been exploring abandoned buildings for 6 years. I want to say that because it establishes what I was and what I was not. I was not a thrill seeker who stumbled in on a dare. I was someone who had spent 6 years learning how to do this carefully. I knew how to assess structural integrity, how to move through a compromised building, and how to tell someone where I was going and when to expect me back. I was experienced and I was cautious, and I was still not prepared for what was in that factory. The plant was a former automotive parts manufacturer on the east side of Detroit, closed for over 20 years. A 4-story building covering most of a city block, the kind of industrial structure Detroit has in abundance, vast and deteriorating, and to the right eye, extraordinarily photogenic. I went in on a Saturday morning, told my roommate where I was going, gave him the address, said I would be back by 2 in the afternoon, and that if I had not texted by 2:30, he should call 911 and give them the address. That protocol is why I am here to tell this story. I entered through a ground floor window on the south side, a standard entry point with a clear frame, no glass, and a solid floor below. The ground floor was a production floor, massive open space with old machinery still in place and light coming in through broken skylights 40 feet above. I was photographing for about 40 minutes when I heard something from the floor above me. Movement, not the settling of an old building, and not wind through broken glass. Deliberate, substantial movement. Something heavy crossing a floor above my head. I stopped and listened. The movement continued for about 10 seconds and then stopped. I had been in enough abandoned buildings to know that movement meant one of 3 things. An animal, possible. Structural settling triggered by my own movement, possible. Or another person, the option I had to take most seriously. I had not told anyone else about this location. I kept my spots private, so if there was another person in this building, they had not come because of me. They had already been here. I made the decision I had made a policy of years earlier, in a different building in a different city. I moved toward my exit, not running, moving efficiently and with purpose. I was halfway across the production floor when I heard footsteps on the stairs. The interior staircase to my right, still intact. Footsteps coming down, more than one set. 2 people at least, coming down faster than casual. I did not wait to see who it was. I covered the remaining distance to the entry window at a pace I will not pretend was anything other than running. I went through the window and was outside and moving away from the building when I heard someone reach the window behind me. I did not look back. I called my roommate from the street, told him I was out and okay, and gave him the situation. He called 911 while I kept moving. Detroit PD responded to the building and found 2 individuals inside, both with prior records and both in possession of items connecting them to a series of copper theft incidents across the east side. They had been using the factory as a staging area, storing what they took before moving it, using it because it was abandoned and because anyone who did come in, an explorer or a photographer, was not going to call the police. The detective said urban exploration sites were used specifically because of the assumption that visitors would not involve law enforcement. He said the protocol I had with my roommate was why this worked out. Someone knew where I was. That is the entire safety architecture for what I was doing. Someone knows where you are, and knows when to call if you do not come back. I was working on a documentary. I want to be clear about that because it explains why I was there alone and why I had equipment. A short documentary about the history of abandoned psychiatric institutions in the Northeast, the specific architecture, the treatment philosophies embedded in the building design, the communities whose histories were held in those walls. Legitimate work, research-backed. I had permits for the property obtained through the state agency that administered the abandoned facility. I had permission to be there, which meant I was there officially and alone. The facility had operated from 1902 until its closure in 1994. 92 years of institutional history across a campus of 11 buildings on 38 acres of rural New Jersey. I was working in the main building, the original 1902 structure, for stories with long corridors and patient rooms on either side. Empty for 25 years. I had been working for about 3 hours when I was on the 3rd floor setting up a wide shot of the corridor, the repetition of doors, the light from room windows making stripes across the floor. Through my viewfinder I saw something that made me lower the camera. At the far end of the corridor, where it turned toward the stairwell, a door was moving. Not wind. The windows in this corridor were sealed. No cross ventilation. I called out. I said I had permits for this location, that it was a closed set and asked if anyone else was there. No response. I started walking toward the door. I know looking back that was the wrong direction, but I was a professional with a permit and I had announced myself, and I wanted to know if someone was there without authorization. I was 30 feet from the door when it opened fully and a man stepped into the corridor. He was in his 40s, not dressed for exploration, not carrying equipment. He said I should not be here. I said I had a permit. He said I should go, in the specific way of someone who has made a decision. I backed up slowly toward the stairwell at my end, not turning my back on him. He watched but did not follow. I reached the stairwell, went down, exited the building, and called the state agency that had issued my permit. I described the man and what he had said. The agency called local police. Officers found him in the facility. He had been living there, in a room on the 3rd floor that he had made habitable over what the investigation determined had been months. He had accessed the property through a compromised section of the perimeter fence. Room 314 had a direct line of sight to the main entrance and the parking area. He had seen me arrive and had been watching me for 3 hours. The detective said having the permit was protective. It meant the agency knew I was there, that there was a record of my presence, and that an accountability structure existed that my call activated. Without the permit, I would have been just another explorer who went in without telling anyone. The permit was my protocol. Document your presence. If you enter any property for any purpose, create a record that someone official holds. A permit, a registered entry, written notification to someone who knows where you are. The record is the thing that brings help when you need it. It was my first time doing anything like this. I want to say that because the people in the other stories had experience. I did not. I was 21. A group of 4 of us had decided to explore a dead mall about an hour from our college. One that had been closing stores for years and finally shuttered completely in 2019. Still structurally intact and still accessible through a loading dock in the back that was common knowledge among people who knew about the place. We went in together on a Saturday afternoon. The mall was extraordinary in a way that surprised me. I had expected a stripped and vandalized shell. What we found was closer to a time capsule. Stores still signed, some still with merchandise on shelves, the food court with franchise signage still in place above empty counters. We split up. That was the mistake. Not maliciously, we were in a mall with phones, and we knew where the entrance was. 2 people went left toward the department store anchor. I went right with a friend named Jake toward the smaller stores. Jake saw something he wanted to photograph on the 2nd level and went up. I stayed on the ground floor alone. I was walking toward the former food court when I noticed a sporting goods store. Not the store itself, but the back wall. A doorway had been cut through the drywall, roughly done with a saw and no concern for how it looked, leading to the maintenance corridors behind the retail space. I stopped and looked at the cut doorway and the darkness beyond it, and I saw light. Not ambient, not from a skylight. A warm, artificial point source light, like someone had a lamp on somewhere in the back corridors of a dead mall. I called Jake. I said to come down to the ground floor near the food court and not to ask questions. He came down. I showed him the doorway and the light. He said we needed to find the others and leave. He was 21, and it was his first time doing this too, and he said exactly the right thing. We found our other 2 friends, told them what we had seen, and left through the loading dock. We sat in the car in the parking lot, and I called 911. I described them all, the location of the sporting goods store, the cut doorway, and the light. The officer said dead malls in that area had been a recurring problem. A unit went in. In the maintenance corridor system behind the sporting goods store, extending through a significant portion of the mall's service infrastructure, they found an encampment. Multiple people had been living in the maintenance corridors, using service infrastructure that still had some functional utilities, for long enough to establish it properly. They had a clear view through the cut doorway of anyone who came near that section. They had seen us come in. The officer said the light was the tell and that I had not gone toward it. I had called my group, left, and then called them. That sequence was everything. In a building like that, you were outnumbered before you knew the count. Never go toward the light in an abandoned space. The light means people. People in a space that is supposed to be empty are not there for reasons that benefit you. Get out. Call. Let the people whose job it is determine what the light means.